Yeah, I thought today would be great just as we start tomorrow to kind of have the quarterbacks available for you. So we'll have Kyle, Devin, and Tristan here. Lincoln, as a freshman, we'll let him take a pass on the first time around, but he's done a great job, just coming in and kind of getting thrown to the wolves a little bit this summer with Coach Mick in the weight room and, trying to figure out how to take a snap just, with the guys out there when, they're out there working and throwing on their own. But he's doing a good job. But all three of these guys have done a great job this summer. They're gonna battle it out. It starts, it started in the spring. It continued throughout the summer. And now here we are, first day of spring or summer practice starting tomorrow. So those guys will be here for you. You guys can chat with them, and then we'll just take a few questions here.
All right, we'll open it up over here to the right. Dom Sperry, WBNS.
Coach, I know you've been asked a lot about the quarterback situation. You would hope that a starter may come out of spring ball. Do you have in your mind when you want to have someone named? And do you see a scenario where two guys might play?
You just never know how it's all going to shape. We've had this situation before. We kind of mentioned this last week a little bit where, we had going back with CJ, going back with Justin, Dwayne, where, after the first couple of weeks of fall practice, we felt like somebody emerged, and then we went with the starter. But that evaluation continued into the season. Remember that first year with CJ, it was, after the third game, he kind of had that shoulder issue, and then Kyle played in that game, and then CJ went back in. So you just never know how things are going to go. But in an ideal world, you'd love to have somebody emerge after the first week or two, and we usually have that scrimmage on that second week on that Saturday, and usually have a pretty good feel. I remember when I was playing college football, and we had a competition between me and somebody who was a couple years ahead of me, and it went all the way down to that last scrimmage, and then it kind of went into those first few games. And, I was named the starter, and then it continued to be the starter. But so every situation is different. But again, if you're asking for an ideal situation, you'd love for somebody to emerge here the first couple of weeks, and then they're taking the majority of the reps at once as you head into the game week.
Right behind him, played all WSYX.
Little departure here, but it seems to be this drumbeat about expansion. Can you tell us what you know or hear about the Big Ten possibly adding teams in the not too distant future?
I don't know. You may know more than me. You hear different things going on out there, and certainly I know the Big Ten, wants to position themselves well in the future. By adding USC and UCLA, it's become a national, coast-to-coast conference. And I know that, we want to make sure that, we're, in the next decade or 2 decades down the road, we're in the best position to be the best conference in America. That's all I know. I know that there's rumors out there, but
You think there will just be 1, 2, or 3 conferences, maybe 2 in the not too distant future?
I mean, you're starting to see conferences become a lot bigger than they ever have. That's for sure. But yeah, it's like, tomorrow's the first day of practice in football, and that's kind of where my focus is right now. But you're right. Every year it just changes so much. Sometimes it's hard to grab onto.
Hey, folks, I'm going to ask you, just coming off of Media Day last Wednesday, I'd like to keep to just one question per, because I've got like 25 people that already want to ask today. So let's go one and done, and if we can squeeze a couple more in at the end, we'll do that. Kelly, it's WSYX.
You guys added the Northwestern transfer to Ohio State, Kevin Glover. What is the action program, and is it likely to be redshirt?
Yeah, so I think by NCAA rules, I can't talk about any type of situation like that with NCAA rules. So before I comment on that, I want to make sure that I'm okay. Yeah.
Bill Landis, the podcast.
Ryan, do you remember how many weeks into your first season of UNH that battle carried out before you were in?
I think it was 3 weeks in. Yeah, I was actually thinking about that the last couple of days. I think it went all the way to that last scrimmage, that third week. Yeah.
But then into the season as well, or?
Yeah, and then I got named the starter for the first game, and then it kind of went from there, and never looked back really.
I just want because you've gone through, not every head coach that has to make it, but it's actually gone through it as a player. I'm just wondering how that informs your decision-making process.
Yeah, it does. I think that's part of the position just in general above quarterback. There's so many things that come with it. And when you've gone through it, not at this level, but, still playing college football and being around the position, there's so much that goes with it. And you don't know until you're actually in a game. I mean, to sit here and say, we went into that Minnesota game with CJ saying that, he was going to be a Heisman Trophy finalist in 2 years, or 1 year for the next 2 years. That wasn't true. Shoot, after the first half, I was like, I don't know, but you just kind of figure it out. You keep growing and you keep building. Everybody's different. All those guys are different. I think with just thinking about since we've been here with Dwayne was in a couple of situations, the rivalry game, where you kind of knew a little bit what you had going into the season. Justin Fields, a totally different situation. Hadn't played a lot of football, but we knew he had a really high ceiling. These guys are a little bit different. The good thing about both of these guys is they've been in the system for a little while. So, Kyle is into year 3 and Devin into his second year. So that's good. They know the system, but now they have to go play. And, when you really know, once you start playing games. But I think that's part of it is playing the position, coaching the position, and just, seeing things in practice that you're projecting to say, okay, we think that based on what we're seeing in practice that they're going to do well in the games.
If you don't know until the game starts, then you envision a scenario where you don't make a choice and play both the first few weeks.
I mean, I can. Yeah, I mean, somebody has to emerge to be the starter for sure. Yeah, and if you don't know, then you just keep pushing forward. I'd like for somebody to step up and for that to happen, but you just don't know. And shoot, I mean, Joe broke his hand that 1 year. There's just things happen. You think about the year that the national championship was won here. It took all 3 guys. So the message to that room is going to be that we need to be the best quarterback room in the country. And whoever's playing on the field, the other 3 guys need to support him, and they need to keep pushing each other to be the best room. And right now, that's the focus.
Right behind Bill, Cameron T. Robinson, the athletic.
So Ryan, at the end of the spring game, you mentioned how much better the secondary had been that spring, breaking on balls more. What do you need to see from that group this in fall camp to see that they're taking that next step?
Yeah, it's continued into the summer. Just the competitiveness. A lot of the stuff that Mick's been doing in the off season is all about competition, and whatever it's been, whether it's a shuttle or lifting weights, it's about competition. It's about competing. And it's the same thing with the DBs is competing on the perimeter, making tackles, getting their hands on balls. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And if we're competitive, if we're fierce out there, if we're tough, if we're smart, then we'll have a chance. But everything we've seen so far is very encouraging.
Right next door, Rob Aller, Columbus Dispatch.
Ryan, on this whole quarterback decision, how much of this is eyeball test and gut versus analytics? Where do you
Yeah, it's probably the worst part, but we're going to start everything. We're going to start 4-1, we're going to start 7-11, we're going to start competitive teamwork, all that. We're going to start drives, turnovers. That part is kind of the analytic part of it. And you said that the eyeball has to just see when someone, walks in the huddle before drive, or, on that 3rd and 3 or red zone when the game's on the line, what's that going to look like? See, that's where quarterbacks are the best. Win the game, the most competitive on the field. And I think where we got, Dwayne, I think about like all the way to that Maryland game where he had to really go win the game with his feet. You think about the Clemson game with Justin when he took that hit and came back and throw 6 touchdown passes, or just the way that CJ attacked that last game against Georgia. Like, that's what we want. We want the most competitive guy in the field. And it doesn't happen overnight, but that's what we're working towards. And like you said, I can't sit here and tell you like there's a certain statistic or analytic that we can say, hey, yes, this is going to be our guy. And so we'll just keep working towards it.
Tony Urban, Buckeye Huddle.
Ryan, how does the battle for the scout team quarterback shake out, and what could Lincoln give you there?
Yeah, I think he can really help us, especially with some of the quarterbacks we see that are more athletic. You know, it's one thing to go through, you know, a drill with a quarterback that maybe can't disconnect, but when you're reading a defensive end or you're scrambling or those type of things, to have somebody who really can mimic what the other quarterback's going to do, that's really good. It's different. You know, the guys in the back end have to cover a little longer. You know, the guys have to pursue a little bit more. You got to cage the pocket a little bit. So all those things I think Lincoln can do. You know, who knows? I'm not going to put a limit on what was going to happen this year, but you know, if it plays out the way we think it might, Lincoln will have a great opportunity to go against our defense and grow and learn. But you know, I'll be surprised if he also doesn't have a chance to get in the game this year and get his feet wet. So we'll see. But yeah, to your point, I think that's going to be a weapon for us.
Nathan Baird, Lincoln.com.
You talked before about, I guess you was kind of alluding to this, and you said before that driving the offensive points being like a crucial part of this evaluation, but as you're just saying, you know, like the CJ last year, there's maybe a higher standard for doing those sorts of things under duress. Is it just things on the football field that you've been evaluating for a couple of years to make that decision, or are there things you're learning about these guys as people that practice that you kind of explain what that is?
Yeah, no, a big part of it is who they are as people, what's going on off the field, what's going on in the locker room. Because, you know, those guys have to believe in the quarterback. And that's a huge part of it. And it starts in the weight room. You guys heard me talk about that before with Mick. And the guys see the work that's put in. They see the leadership, the ability to stand up in front of a group of guys and project and talk to them and lead them. And those all matter. And we put that in front of the group in competitive situations to see who's going to win. And the team has to believe in the quarterback. And like you said, it's not all on the field, but certainly ultimately that's what it's going to come down to.
Front row, Joey Kaufman, Columbus Dispatch.
Brian, just on the other side of the ball, we're kind of getting more about the Jackson, Shell, Spring, now sort of probably a bit of work that.
Yeah. You know, as camp goes on, we'll start to go back into that, you know, personnel grouping and see how it plays out. The number one thing is, you know, we've talked about this, is that you want to put your guys in the best position to be successful. And so if we think that the Jack will give us something, we have like 3 or 4 guys that we think will be really good at the Jack position, we'll do that. And so, you know, he'll kind of talk through that with the defensive staff. And as we get, you know, through the first week or two, then we'll start diving into that. But it's certainly a package that brings a lot of, you know, confusion to the defense, and it's a little bit different in terms of the fits. So it gives us something, but at the same time, we want to make sure it's the right mix.
Austin Ward, Rivals, dotting the I.
And it seemed like most of the injuries and stuff that you're monitoring in the spring were guys that are ready to go by training camp. Are there any that will limit, any will carry over or limit some guys at all to start camp? And if not, how does that change competitions with having Evan back, James? It's different than spring.
Yeah.
How long did those last? Keep talking about quarterback.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. We're at full strength. So, you know, it's a big part of the preseason is getting the work you need, getting guys ready, but keeping them healthy and getting ready for that first game. But guys have worked hard to rehab to get to where we are. So we feel good about that. Yeah, now we're at full strength. I mean, we're 4 deep now in a lot of areas. And so, you know, we'll be able to, at times, you know, go 2 fields where we can get, you know, reps on one field, reps on another, instead of trying to get 4 groups in. That'll allow us to get, you know, double the amount of reps in less time. So, yeah, there's a lot more guys, and that means a lot more competition. And like you said, now where you may have had one other guy at your position, now you're going to have, you know, 4 at the running back position, 5. So that's always good. It's always good to have competition in there, and that's what this whole offseason is about. Has been about competing. So we'll keep, you know, pushing that message forward.
Dave Bettle, 24/7 Sports.
Brian, we talked about this a little bit at Big Ten Media Days, around carrying down the rotation up front on the defensive line. Still rotating, but maybe even using the best guys more in the games. Can you expound on that a little bit, maybe have a conversation with Larry about that?
Yeah, well, I think we now have guys who have experience going into the season, and I think that they can you know, handle a lot more reps. Now we still have a long season to play, but it typically comes down to how many guys do you think can play at starter level, and those guys will play. But I think the D-line that we have, these guys can handle more volume than maybe in the past. So, we'll see how the younger guys develop. I mean, it's always good to have more guys who can play in a game and you feel good putting in the game to rotate a little bit. But these guys can handle more, and I think you'll see them in there more.
Stephen Means, Cleveland.com.
When you first got the kind of goal of turning Ohio State quarterback, you won the expectation you guys were finally first round draft picks. You're 3 quarterbacks in that, you've done that. Does that all build on the expectation of who comes next? Maybe how you go about evaluating quarterbacks when it's a free trail or you're going to a quarterback out of your own, add pressure to who comes next after that?
Yeah, I mean, you can say it doesn't, but I think it does. Yeah, the expectations and standards are very high here, but that's at every position. But yeah, I mean, the guys that have come before have done an unbelievable job. So yeah, that is the expectation. We should be, playing for a national championship. We should be, Heisman Trophy finalists and a first round draft pick. That's been the standard set, and we got to keep building on that. So, but what jumps out is that if this doesn't happen, just because you're the quarterback at Ohio State doesn't mean that all those things are going to happen. It takes a lot of hard work. It takes a lot of production on the field. You got to go put it on the field. It isn't just going to happen, and I think these guys understand that. But yeah, I mean, anytime you're going to be the quarterback at Ohio State, there's a lot of pressure.
Dan Holt, London Warriors.
Brian, it seems like you guys have kind of narrowed your pool a bit in recruiting in terms of who you're focusing on, and maybe getting a little bit more aggressive in terms of bringing guys in through the transfer portal. Has there been a shift in philosophy there at all this year?
It's just now that there's more people in the transfer portal, and it's a lot easier for people to go in and out of the portal. For some of our guys who decided that they want to maybe try to go play somewhere else. So there's a lot more movement, and so with that, there's just more availability, and there's sometimes more holes you have to fill. And so we just try to make sure we don't change our philosophy in that we want to find guys who fit Ohio State. You can't just throw guys in here; it's just not going to work. And so I think we found a nice group. They've assimilated well, and hopefully. Well, the guys we brought in, we've done pretty well with, and hopefully we can continue to do that. But there's a lot of pride in that locker room. So bringing somebody in, you have to be careful about that. So.
Andy Anders, Buckeye Sports Bulletin.
Yes, obviously the evaluation with Brian Hartline calling plays is still ongoing, but looking back on your first year's calling plays at Temple at Boston College, what things were important in those summers and falls to get you ready to embrace that role effectively?
I've said it before. I think probably the easiest part of being a coordinator is calling the plays. If you are listening, that's pretty low. It's really about the day-to-day organization. It's about deciding what plays you're going to install. It's about organizing your staff to make sure that they install it properly. It's about organizing practice to make sure that every moment on that field is being done the way that you want it. Then watching the film and making the corrections. Identifying, where, your best players are. And then when you get into a game, so training guys to be ready to put it, to run the offense, the situations, there's just so many things that come up that you have to get prepared for. Then there's the game planning, making sure that, you have the right plays in, making sure that you've installed it the right way, that you practiced it the right amount of times, the right looks. Sometimes I made a mistake, plenty of time going into a game where you're practicing defenses maybe you didn't see. You didn't prepare the guys properly. So I could go on for hours about all the things that come with being an offensive coordinator. The calling the plays, once that's done and it's on the board, I mean, you have a sheet of paper. If it's on the sheet, it's good enough to call. Now, there is an art to it, and there's adjustments in game that have to be made, but it's all the other things that come with being a coordinator. And so I was fortunate enough to have really good guys around me that helped me with that. And, Brian's doing a really good job for the first time, in the first few months of doing that. And now this is his first preseason going through it. And the more he can do of that, then certainly it allows me more opportunity to move around the program and do more.
Second row left, Steve Melwagon, 24/7 Sports.
Yeah, Coach. Secondary, has gotten a lot of attention, and you had a couple transfers there. I know that Carter was injured a little bit in the spring, but is the hope that you have that kind of competition to give all 5 of those spots fill in, and what you're feeling about what that'll look like?
Yeah, I think the corner position will be very competitive, but Denzel Burke has had a great offseason, so we're expecting him to have some of his best football this fall. Jordan Hancock's had a great offseason, but Davison and Lorenzo and Calvin and Jermaine and Jair, I mean, again, a lot of depth there, so very competitive. But then also at the three safety positions as well. So Lathan is the incumbent there at what we call the Bandit, and with Jair and Proc and Malik Harford's had a great offseason. You're going to see a bunch of guys in there, and then it'll be interesting to see how the nickel position competition gets sorted out as we get into that first game. We had Tanner did a lot of that for us last year, and that's an important position for us.
Bill Rabinowitz, Columbus Dispatch.
Eventually, you will name a starting quarterback. How close do you think you are right now, and how close do you need to be to have either one of those guys be someone that you help?
Sure.
How good is it to get both of them?
No, I think it's a great question because, I remember a couple of years back when we had a pretty loaded wide receiver or quarterback room. I think we had Jack and we had CJ and I think we had Quinn and Devin came in. It was a busy room. I remember someone said, "Boy, you got really hard decisions. It's gonna be really hard on you." And what's hard is when you don't have quarterbacks who can play. What's easy is when you have guys who can play. You just got to figure out who the best one is. And I kind of feel like that's the way it is right now. But to say that they're ready to play right now, I don't know. I mean, we got to jump into this practice and figure out where we are in the first couple of weeks. But I have a feeling that both guys are going to be starter level right away. I don't know. Halfway through the season, I don't know. I don't know how the journey is going to go. But you're right. I mean, it's a good problem to have if you have a couple guys that you feel like you can put into a game and can go play. But we're not there right now, and you just don't know how it's going to shake.
Doug Reese, the podcast.
This is a logistical pre-question. Early in camp, will Devin and Kyle split the reps with the ones as you continue to figure this out?
Yeah. Yep.
I saw someone say that one of the most important relationships in the building is between the play caller and the quarterback. As Brian works into this and however this transition goes, what do you want your relationship with the starting quarterback especially to be potentially in a world where maybe you aren't calling the plays on Saturday? How much do you want to stay connected or need to stay connected to that starting quarterback?
Yeah, I think it's critical that I stay connected in all of that because I think you're exactly right. However we end up calling the plays or not, what matters is what the quarterback knows and how it's all tied in together. And so if we're all talking the same language and, when we game plan, if the quarterbacks understand exactly why something's being called and all those things, and that's why, I have to be in those meetings and will be in those meetings, throughout the whole season. That's to your point, to me, the most important thing, because when you call a play, the quarterback should know exactly why are you calling the play. We're calling it to take a shot. We're calling it to get a completion. We're calling it because we're expecting, whatever. And that takes a lot of work in the meeting room. It takes a lot of preparation. And so that's a part that I will be involved with.
And just a clarifying follow-up that's tied to the first question. I don't know if we talk about this sometimes, like, hey, you're either going to be the play caller or Brian's going to be the play caller. And that's it. It's one or the other. Is this going to be like an emerging, your involvement, especially during the week, right? May lessen, may increase. Is it maybe not like a clean break? You make a decision one way or the other, but you are trying to figure this out during the course of the season, how much week to week you are directly involved with the offense or not.
Yeah. It's not going to be a clean break for sure. That's just not going to happen that way. But, as things go along and the more comfortable I think we all feel, then we go from there. But we did that a little bit with Kevin. My first couple of years here, we kind of both were very much involved with it. So, as long as everyone's communicating, everybody's on the same page, because there's certain lessons you have to learn as you come up and do it. I went through it as a coordinator. I've done it as a head coach. And so you try to share your experiences. I'll try to share my experiences with Brian on a daily basis and Justin Fry. Both of those guys are very, very good. Joe Philbin has an unbelievable, background of calling plays. organizing offenses. So he really can help as well. And usually you're just trying to give them, what you've learned, the scars that have come up over the years. And so over the season, it'll continue to evolve, and how much and how fast is still yet to be seen.
Got time for one last question, Tim May, Letterman Row.
Okay, this be a compound question.
You guys are beautiful.
At the end of the last century, you were competing, like you said, for a starting job at New Hampshire. What were the thoughts that got you through that camp? And how many of those thoughts were also had butterflies in them? Then as the season progressed, I think at one point you had thrown 8 touchdown passes, but 10 interceptions or something like that. And they stuck with you. You understand what I'm saying there? In
1000%.
other words, once they made their decision, they stuck with you. So, I know that's like a convoluted.
No, I know what you're asking.
How important is it
Yeah.
once you get to that point, what gets you to that point, and the confidence the coach is showing you when you are going to have ups and downs?
Ultimately, you just have to go compete. And I think I got myself a little bit jammed up early on with a little bit of, trying to be perfect. And then what ended up happening is, you start making interceptions because you're worried about being perfect instead of just going, compete, and playing. And, how it all shakes out, you got to prepare the best you can and compete as hard as you possibly can. And then the more you play, the more confidence you get, And so that's part of coaching too, is the coaches bringing them along and building up their confidence that, hey man, you can do this, because there is self-doubt that comes in every now and again. You have to fight that.
And there came at what we saw with Justin, saw with CJ. I watched the highlights of the 1999 New Hampshire team the other day. It got that way with you, where you all said you were out there balling as the offset coach, right? I mean, when did that kind of evolve, and how important is it to get this guy to that point?
Yeah, well, once you have a couple of games under your belt and you start to play and you start to believe in it, and especially when you can get the rhythm of the game, if you haven't played a lot, getting a couple completions early, I remember that first game at Minnesota, the first call, we tried to get into, spent a lot of time on that first play for CJ. It was like, it was an unbalanced, we moved the guy over just to throw a hitch and he completed it. Like, okay, we got that under his belt. Because, all the thoughts that go through your head as a quarterback, and then once you find the rhythm of the game, your instincts just take over when you can stop thinking about things. And I think that's where, the experienced quarterbacks, they know what to expect, and they just kind of find the rhythm of the game and they throw and catch. Early on, you can kind of talk to yourself a little bit and you can spin yourself into a tizzy. And so that's part of the coaching. It's part of bringing along a young quarterback, which, I think there's an art to it. I think there's a part of that you have to really consider when you're bringing somebody along. How are you doing that? You can't just throw them out there and expect them to, that's why I felt, I think I've said this before, coming out of the Oregon game, we put too much on CJ. That was too much for him. We should have played better defense and run the ball. We didn't. He threw for over 400 yards. That wasn't CJ's fault, but he's getting a hard time, after the game on social media and everything. That was not CJ's fault. That was our fault. And that was a mistake. And you learn from those type of things. But I think that's all part of bringing along a young quarterback.
Coach, thank you very much.
Yeah, you got it, guys. Thanks.